the one and only Greg Wyshynski, joining us on the program. What's going on, brother? Did you have a great weekend? It was a pretty dull weekend for you, it looked like.
Your shoes are usually dumb, so like that makes sense that they would be commented on. They're the first thing I always see when I see you down in Tampa.
Yeah, you and everybody else. Now the whole Lightning front office is always, if I wear something that isn't sparkling or anything bright, Julian puts his arm on my shoulder and says, Jay, are you okay? And I go, yeah, I'm fine, Julian. Thank you.
So the stadium series was awesome. I was in Columbus for that. And I think what I've always said about these outdoor games now is that they're less about the television product, although I thought the broadcast was pretty dope with a lot of the visuals on Saturday.
For sure.
And more about like the gathering of the tribes that happen in the cities in which these games are held. And we'll see that next year in Florida, obviously, with both those games. But, you know, I said this on our show, our post-game show on ESPN. I didn't know there was that many Blue Jackets fans. Like, I'll be honest with you. If you went to that game or thought about that game, you figured if they packed 94,000 people in the Horseshoe, then you know what, like at least 35%, 40% would be Detroit fans.
Right.
And that wasn't the case at all. Like the Blue Jackets fans probably had 85-15 split as far as the fan bases in that place. And that's why these games exist and why they're so great is because it gives you this moment as a fan in any of these markets to go to a game, whether it's Raleigh or Columbus or wherever, or Nashville, and you look around, you're like, oh my God, I am not alone. I am with so many of my peers and so many of my people. I'm part of a movement. I'm not in a niche sport. You know, I'm you know, there's so many of me around. And I think people in Columbus really had that realization in a wonderful way on Saturday. And it's been kind of a magical year for them, despite all that preseason grief that continues to sort of define their season.
How cold was it?
That was the coldest I had been since the Ann Arbor game. But I was complaining to my friend Nick Kotstanicka, who writes for NHL.com, and he just like called me a coward basically because I mean he was in Minnesota for their Winter Classic, and that remains like the coldest anyone's ever been for one of these games.
Right.
That was also the game where famously the St. Louis Blues showed up in swimwear as their pregame outfits. So I mean, it was 20 degrees. The wind chill must have brought that thing below zero because it was constant and horrible. But you know, I talked to the players and they love it when it's like that. James Van Riemsdyk said this is going to be great for the ice. So you take that every day over what I experienced in Lake Tahoe a few years ago, where the NHL forgot that a midday sun and an elevated rink don't mix well unless you want to make a Slurpee.
Yeah, I can't wait to see how that's another topic of conversation here. Wondering what it's going to be like in early February here in Tampa as we get a game at Raymond James Stadium. You brought up the Johnny G thing. I don't know if a sport has ever done a better job of honoring a fallen player than what we've seen so far this year with Johnny Gaudreau. And I try to look back at other sports, and we've obviously had some tragedies over there. As I think Sean Taylor, the Washington Redskins safety, Miami Hurricane, like that was another one that kind of rattled the league, and they wore the 21 on the back of the helmet. But just the way that it's not just Columbus, just the way that the entire league has embraced the entire Gaudreau family, even going into the Four Nations. Like, I don't think it could have. I don't think the entire game could have honored him any better.
No, and I mean, one, he was a star player. Two, he connected with fans and peers in the way that he played the game with such enthusiasm and such love for the sport. I mean, the Johnny Hockey thing wasn't just because he was good at hockey; it was because it was what defined him and drove him, and he brought so much, passion and also a sense of joy to the game. I mean, when I think of Johnny Gaudreau, the first thing I think of is when I covered the All-Star game one year, and during the trick shot competitions that they used to do, he was extremely disappointed that the NHL would not allow him to light a stick on fire. And I mean, like, that's who we're talking about. We're talking about somebody that it was such a showman and really understood what it meant to be a star player. And one of the reasons why I think it's resonated, one, because the Blue Jackets have done an amazing job all year of honoring his legacy with the empty stall in the locker room to, having his family be involved in the stadium series and the ways in which they did. But it's also just like, I was there when the Red Wings got off their team bus for the stadium series, and I didn't know what they were wearing. And to see them all come out and Johnny and Matthew Gaudreau jerseys from Boston College and, their minor league teams or junior teams, was just tremendous. And, it's, I guess what I'm trying to say is that it went beyond just one team remembering the guy.
Right.
It's a league-wide thing, and a league-wide thing where there's not simply just like, we'll throw a decal on our helmet for a night, but like we are actively looking for ways to remember this guy and what he meant to the NHL and to us. And that's, you rarely get that in pro sports.
And I think that's one of those things that just sets hockey apart. It really does. Like, that's why, when people say, what do you love about the sport? Through a tragic time like this, like the celebration is just, it's ongoing, and it ain't going to stop for sure.
As much as I don't like to traffic in, please like my sports stuff, see also NHL players show up for their All-Star game, but NBA players don't, kind of conversation that's been happening for like the last month. There is something to be said for what you just said, Jay, which is like, you think back to the Humboldt Broncos tragedy and how the hockey world rallied around those kids and that team after that bus accident. Like it is those moments when you realize that maybe it's just the quality of the players and the human beings involved in the sport, or just this notion of, we are not as big as other organizations, so we have to kind of like, we're a family. You know what I mean? Like,
no, for sure. You look inward.
Look inward. There are those moments when you just realize that it does hit different when it happens in hockey, and how the league and players react to it.
Well, I on a lighter note, I just wanted to commend you for taking all of those daggers and arrows from Canadian media after the Four Nations. I saw your tweet a couple days ago about that, and I was like, oh, you can come over here. We're not going to crap all over everybody for something. But I was at a party. I was up in New York for a surprise 40th birthday party, and some sports fans, some non-sport, everybody was locked into that Saturday night game. I don't think it could have gone any better. I mean, other than, if the U.S. won, but just the fact that it started, the fights were part of it. It wasn't the only thing. It was part of it, but it was a national pride. And listen, you have PK Subban, on ESPN, and he's like telling NBA guys, right, which is always usually topic A, of like, this is why people, they max out, they give their entire effort. And NBA former players are just sitting there, just stoic, and it went viral. And it was such a great highlight on the game, where it wasn't even just about McDavid and Matthews and all this stuff. It was about the hockey player, what goes into pride in this game. And Connor McDavid scoring the game winner in overtime, like, this is, if the NHL wrote a story, this is probably how they would want it to go. But I don't even think they thought it would be as well received as this was.
No, and no one did. The PK thing's funny though, because like, I love the guy, he's a colleague, but when we start like I mentioned before, trotting out the NHL players give their effort all the time, dude, we literally had to make a rule that suspended guys that skip the All-Star game, because that's how many guys were skipping the All-Star game. So like, we could look down our nose at the NBA all we want about their effort and whatever, but like, we had to invent a rule because people literally would just be like, I don't want to participate in the All-Star game. That's what we had to do.
And we were in Toronto last year. So we all watched the game.
What are we doing?
Yeah.
Anyways, that's besides the point. It went well beyond what anybody thought, and obviously, like, the fights, the Kachucks, and JT Miller fighting in the first 9 seconds of the game in Montreal sort of set up everything that came after it. I do think the Canada-Sweden game low-key got everybody into the tournament, because that was the first game they played, and that was like proof of concept to hockey fans that this was going to be something worth tuning into. You can't get away from the geopolitical stuff, the anthem booing, the 51st state stuff. That certainly added a lot to the mix. I was in Boston for the games. They did their best to try to keep the noise out, but by the end, John Cooper's like, we won this for Canada and sovereignty and all this, so there was a certain amount of that too. But to your point though, like, the most important thing, and I give the NHL endless credit for this, was they jumped the line to get in front of the Olympics to offer the first opportunity for Matthews and McDavid and McCarr and the Kachucks and Hughes,
Right.
all of these guys, their first chance to represent their countries in a best on best tournament. And so the people that tuned in after the Kachuk fights then got to see like the best version of the sport played
Right.
with amazing stakes at hand because of the rivalry. And so the secret sauce of the tournament was getting all these guys in a best on best before they had a chance to do it in Italy next year. And then, having people tune in and want to come back the following Thursday to watch the championship game because of just how entertaining the totality of the package was. Like, you don't get almost 10 million viewers just because of a few fights. You get almost 10 million viewers because of how incredible the pace and the speed and the drama is in that game.
Yeah, and I think you look at some of the names that were highlighted too, right? I think we don't know it maybe on the grand scale, but Jacob Slavin, he's just a phenomenal hockey player, right? I mean, just to watch him make right decision after right decision after right decision. I'm like, this guy is he's phenomenal, right?
Yeah.
He's never going to score as much as McCarr and Fox and Hughes or some of these other guys, but him on that stage going up against the best, like there was a lot of American hockey fans that go, damn, that it's not just a product of Carolina and Rob Brindamore's system. Like that dude's the shit. Like he's the man.
He's
and
legit.
Then to be able to see Sam Bennett, right? Like Sam Bennett,
Yeah.
We see it down here. Like it just showed you, like you'd always need that bottom six grimy forward that's going to score a big goal. And, he's an intricate part of that Florida Panthers team. So I thought it was just cool, kind of the juxtaposition of like, you have a stellar defenseman that is not a McCarr, and then also like a third, fourth line guy that is just going to come up big. That's what hockey's all about, man.
Yeah. And that's how building these national teams is all about. I mean, like, it's not only, having the best talent, but also people that accept their roles, know how to play their roles, are cast correctly. It's kind of been a problem for the U.S. over the years is they didn't really have the right guys, I thought, in their bottom six, but now they might. The Slavin thing was great because it was a reminder that guy for a while was so good defensively that people were like, we should just make another award to give him outside because he'll never win the Norris because he's never gonna have enough points, and people were just like, we should make a defensive defenseman award because he's that good. Your boy Hagel, though, here's the thing about him: like we knew he had the goods offensively, didn't know he had the anti-Kachuk statement making in him. With the, I fight for the flag and not for the cameras. Brandon Hagel, ladies and gentlemen, standing up for Canadian virtue in the face of Kachuckism. I didn't know that was part of his game either.
The first day when everybody came back, so I wore a red, white, and blue tie because I didn't give a shit if Julian Cooper, and I wore red and white. I wore a blue suit with red and white shoes. So I'm like, oh, I'm red, white, and blue. I'm all the good, blah, blah, blah. And Julian comes up to me and goes, hey, look, you got Team Canada shoes on. I go, you son of a... And then Cooper, first thing he noticed, hey, wearing Canada shoes. I'm like, you suck. I'm wearing a red, white, and blue tie. But hey, everybody was just Hagel and Cirelli. Like, it was such a great storyline to come back to because all the Lightning, all the Tampa guys, like they were a huge part of it, and they showed themselves well. Even Gensel, Gensel, Cirelli, Point being bumped up to that first line with McDavid. Like, it was a good showing for Tampa there.
Gensel had like an inside track to maybe be MVP if the Americans had won that tournament. But no, and the cool thing about it from a media perspective is that I learned this. I've covered 4 Olympics, which is really amazing, and you learn pretty quickly that when you get to these kinds of events, it's the one place where you can be partisan. You can cheer in the press box. Like the expectation is that you are not going to separate yourself from your country, especially as an American hockey fan, where I've waited my entire life for another moment that could, come close to being as significant as the Miracle on Ice.
Right.
To your Brisebois anecdote made me think I saw a National Hockey League general manager affiliated with Team Canada at Four Nations the day of the championship game. And I walked past him because I know him a little bit. And I'm like, I just hope everybody has fun out there tonight. and as I'm walking back, he goes, no, you don't. So I mean, everybody's in on the bit. Like no matter what team you represent, no matter who you're working for. Like at the end of the day, we're all Americans, we're all Canadians. We all have tremendous pride in our respective countries' hockey cultures. And that's kind of like why the thing worked is when you get that's I mean, I said it. I've been saying it for weeks. There's an entire women's professional hockey league built on the back of the USA-Canada rivalry. Like
Right.
that's why it exists. They took those two teams and toured them around the country and in Canada and drummed up enough support to then create a professional women's league with those players. Like that's how powerful that rivalry is.
It's a beautiful thing. Yeah, I'm still even somebody brought flowers to John Cooper the other day at Emily Arena, and I saw it as it came in. The two big things of flowers, and the main security guy there. I'm like, Kevin, what are you doing? He's like, use it for Coach Cooper winning the Four Nations. Two
Yeah.
ladies that live down the block brought him. I was like, that's amazing.
Oh,
And
the ladies? Okay, because I
Yeah.
bet if you flip that card over, it said J. Trudeau.
It might have been. I also joked with Cooper the other day. It's a good thing you won because it would have been all your fault. He goes, "Oh, I know. I love when you guys get together, everybody at ESPN, you come up with these like possible trade packages, and this one today, obviously, with the Lightning, the Kraken, the Sabres. I've been teasing it all day on the show. Gordon Peterka going to the Bolts. The Kraken get Cam Atkinson, who hasn't, he's been in and out of the lineup. He's out again tonight, healthy scratch. 2026 third-round pick. They retain 50% of Gordo's salary. The Sabres get a first-round pick from the Bolts, a second-round pick from LA, and then Gage Gonsalves, Nick Purvis, and they retain 25% of Gord's salary. So the Lightning are only going to have to pay 25% in this deal. You get a guy that was part of that Gord, Goodrow, Coleman line that was pivotal to the back-to-back cups. And then Peterka, a young guy, first-round pick from a couple of years ago that, man, could offer some punch in that middle or bottom six. How real do you think – because I'm hearing this from other sources too, where like Gord and Peterka, Alex Tuck, like the Lightning they have their hand in a couple of different pots here.
I don't know how real it is. That was my trade. I wrote it at like 6:30 in the morning the day after the Stadium Series at the airport. But I did good math. I said
a good one, man. It's a good one.
The beginning of it was, how do I get Gord back on the Lightning for the nostalgia of it all? And then I'm like, well, that's dumb. They wouldn't stop there. How do I then rope in other teams to like handle the salary? Then I'm thinking, oh, the Hagel trade with Peterka. Like it all if it ever happened, I've clearly written the Pelican Brief, where all of a sudden this amazing thing then came to fruition. But look, I think that anyone who watches the Lightning knows that their top six is legit as you can come, but they could still probably use a right wing on points line. Peterka could do that easily. I think he's in that Hagel class of, if he's available at the trade deadline, you overcompensate to get him because he's going to be on your team for a very long time and absolutely thrive with the talent you could surround him with. And he's already putting up points on a bad Sabres team. Right. So, and I think he's like a real John Cooper type. I mean, the way that he plays the game, the offense that he could bring, I think he'd be a great fit. The Gord thing is just, I look at that lineup and I just think that they need that kind of guy.
Right.
Down the lineup, a defensive stopper who could offer more offense than a lot of the guys in the bottom six currently can. And I mean, we all remember they didn't want to give him up. Like he was a salary cap casualty in the expansion draft. So the idea that you could somehow, if you can work the numbers, get him back in the lineup, I think is like, would be great for nostalgia, great for vibes, but also the kind of player that they need in their bottom six. So listen, I
love it, man.
I don't think any of it's going to happen, but I think I'm also not trying to throw my colleagues under the bus, but of the trades proposed in that piece you're referencing, I think it's a pretty damn good one. I think it's
good. Clearly the best one. Yeah, and there's proof of concept with the nostalgia moves, bringing Ryan McDonough back. I mean, you're talking about that has paid dividends. We feel bad for Stammer out there. He still hasn't scored in God knows how long.
Let me ask you this, because I was thinking about this when I wrote that piece. Like, do you think that if they were going to do another Brandon Hagel, overcompensate for a young guy having maybe had 2 good years, do you think there's a better chance they do it for a defenseman than a forward?
No, because they have Max Crozier in AHL who proved last year that he could play. He's an NHL defenseman. So if they traded a defenseman, they may trade 2 to get 1, right? Because their top 4 is locked in. They love Moser. He's been fantastic. And it's amazing how he's become a fan favorite so quick when he missed 28 games already this season.
Yeah.
But they look at the deal with Moser and Geeky coming in for Sergachev going, we like this guy. And it's not easy to play with Victor Hedman. Like they've tried Chernak there in the past and it has not worked out well. That's why guys like Jan Ruda work, Strawman work.
Right.
Even Radish worked a little bit this year. They like Radish on the power play. I think he's that third pairing defenseman. So I think you're locked in like with 5 defensemen. Would you get another veteran lefty, over the years, like a Brian Dumoulin type, something like that, where like a guy that's been throughout the league. But I think, that middle six, I think the Peterka makes a lot of sense. And I've been bringing this up for a while now. Isaac Howard is waiting in the wings.
Oh boy, is he? I read something the other day that he's considered maybe the best player in the country right now in the NCAA.
And Breesbaugh, during his fireside chat, as I labeled him a couple of years ago, he a lot of times is when you have these ideas, he's a big pump the brakes. We're very patient, he wasn't like that with Isaac Howard. And having the discussion with other people around here, you don't want to let him get to that last year and then possibly go to a different team. And like this guy right now, like there's no reason for him. He's better than the Gonsalves or the Chafee or some of these other guys. So I wouldn't be surprised if they make a move like you brought up and then also bring in a guy like Isaac Howard.
That's an important point that people forget about the trade deadline. Like the trade deadline is vital in some cases for making your team better. Obviously, the Lightning have used it to perfection some seasons to bolster their cup chances, but it's not the be all and end all about adding players. Like if the Lightning add a Howard, that's huge. Like the Washington Capitals, there's a lot of people being like, what are they going to do at the trade deadline? The answer might be nothing because they have Ryan Leonard coming and he's, was a star for the U.S. junior team. So in a lot of these cases, there's always a chance that they're going to be able to add somebody beyond the deadline to bolster that group after NCAA seasons are done. And I think in the case of the Lightning and the case of the Capitals, that might be the situation this season.
All right, buddy. Let's finish off our chat with the good stuff. John Cena, finally, after all of these years of this bipartisan crowd, let's go Cena, Cena sucks. Will he turn? Won't he turn? He finally, this is the seminal moment you're talking. I have it at number 2, best heel turn. Nothing is going to beat Hogan Bash on the Beach in 96. But if somebody says number 1, it's hard to go against it because you have The Rock, you have Cody, you have something we've waited for so long. The way that they pulled it off was so good. What did you make of that entire thing? Because it was on First Take this morning, right? It's like this was huge, and this is like the memes are nuts.
I can't put it second quite yet because we don't know how it plays out.
That's true,
right? Okay. I think Hogan Andre is still second for me, because it was not only his turn, but it was his alignment with Bobby Heenan. The ultimate, the Lex Luthor to Hogan's Superman, that really made that turn amazing. It's not simply just I want to beat you for the title, as I am aligning myself with your tormentor.
And the chain, him pulling the chain, and
he ripped the chain off,
and the little bit of blood that was here. I thought
it
was
that's right.
Symbolic of like he does bleed like us.
So this one, the moment was incredible. Like I got back from the Stadium Series, I went to my hotel room. I had a coupon for $3 off a drink at the hotel bar. Got myself a double makers. Headed back to the room. I'm like, I'm going to watch Elimination Chamber. Unfortunately, I had fired up Twitter and I saw that corporate Cena was trending. And I'm like, any wrestling fan knows what that means. I'm like, oh no. Right. So I watch it knowing what was coming. Okay. And I was still surprised because I didn't know when it was going to come or how it was going to happen. It was brilliant. And like Cena sold it extremely well and Cody sold it extremely well. Didn't have to sell that Travis Scott punch he took because that was real.
Stiff as I understand how WWE wants to get that crossover. They've always I made the comment the other day of like, I had Coach on Friday, Jonathan Coachman. Yeah. And we were talking about that and he's like, oh, people deserve it. I'm like, listen, you want to know what WrestleMania WWE is all about? Everybody from Liberace to Lane Johnson. Like that's what it's about, right? Yeah. Like if you can bring in those extra eyeballs, you will. But I hope we look back on that moment going, oh, that's why Travis Scott involved. Rather, why the hell was Travis Scott involved?
So the Cena turn probably makes more sense to me if it was explicit in the Elimination Chamber that he needed help to win. Mm-hmm. And maybe we come to find out that The Rock orchestrated something to allow Seth to come back and stomp Punk to then allow Cena to win. We could find out that Cena was the last guy in the ring because of The Rock. We could find out The Rock put him in the match. Like there's a lot of that sort of setup that could occur to make more sense of this. Mm-hmm. Because I do like the idea that this turn happens because Cena realizes he's old and fallible and in order to achieve the thing he wants to achieve, he has to sell out to get it. Like that makes total sense. What doesn't make sense at all to me, man, and I'm still waiting for someone to explain it to me, what was all of that Rock sell your soul Cody nonsense? Like I understand that it exists now in service of this more important logical plot development, but from what I can gather, it's I want you to sell out to me and embrace me and be my corporate champion. And I'm sitting there thinking to myself, what is he already? Like isn't he just like the face of the company? I don't understand any of this. Like
he's
what
on the
is it
Today Show everywhere.
he's like, I need you to do the things like what, drop everything and fight Roman Reigns again. Wouldn't Cody be doing that anyway? I don't understand any of the Rock stuff. It's stupid, it's nonsensical, but it goes to show you how incredible the Cena moment was, that I'm willing to forgive it all because it got us here. Yeah, I don't know where you are on that.
No, listen, I am with you on the whole thing, like sell your soul. And then after in the post-fight press conference, a couple of people said, "Oh, Cena sold, I guess Cena, you have Cena's soul," and he didn't bite on that. So it was like, was that just to kind of throw people off the scent? Because it doesn't seem like they're going down the road of, oh, well, you didn't take Cody's soul, but now you're taking Cena's soul.
Well, they can't. That's weird, the part. Right? That's the part that makes sense, because they can't, because Cena's done after this year. Right. So if he's supposed to be the blunt instrument, the champion of The Rock, the guy that The Rock can deploy to settle old feuds or be in movies or whatever, like he's not going to be the face of the company beyond this year because he's retiring. So this was simply the classic, I'm going to teach you a lesson, Cody, for not doing the thing that I want you to do by having you lose the thing you care about the most through my guy now. Like, I get that part of it. Mm-hmm. And then maybe you'll have learned your lesson, and then you'll come and you'll hug me next time. Like, I mean, that part of it makes sense. But again, what that connotes, what that means, how that impacts Cody's life, that's the part that was never made explicit to me. Because again, he's the face of the company. Exactly. Like, if the company says, I want you to do something for me, he'll do it because he's Cody Rhodes and he's the face of the company. So I don't quite understand any of the Rock stuff.
He's on the board of directors too, being with TKO. The other thing is, when he put up the 3 at Bad Blood, when he came out there and just did the 3, was it hustle, loyalty, and respect? Was it an ode to John Cena? Or is there a third man? Are we taking it back? Like, is it more than just Travis Scott? Because the other thing that I didn't like on the debut show on Netflix was, like, that's where they ended the Bloodline story, like the Ula Falo. Like, you can see Solo kind of, Jacob Fatu's the star, but Solo, who was like built up, he's dominant. Now it's just like he's like not a big time player anymore. Yeah. Well, so the whole Bloodline whole thing that looked like, wow, we came together, did this thing for the Survivor Series, and I feel like The Rock was involved, but he's not involved. And now, like, where does this leave Roman? So he's going to come back. He's going to come back because Rollins kicked the shit out of him in Royal Rumble, and that's a 3-way with CM Punk. But how does he not get involved in that storyline, right?
I don't know, man. Like, I mean, they and NWO Wolfpack did a little bit with the Bloodline. Let's be honest.
They did.
They did that. That's a good question. I think the most interesting seed planted about this for me, and I'd have to go back and watch it, but I did read something where Cena made reference post Royal Rumble that him winning the title would be the best thing for business.
Yes.
And if that's the case, then that's great, like, long-term storytelling, which the WWE still is not very good at. But so I do wonder, like, how long this has been, kind of seeded through the story. Because if that's the case, then I give them credit. They're very good at angles and they're very good at moments, but they're not very good at long-term storytelling. So I would be very surprised pleasantly if that were the case.
Well, who used that term more than anybody was Triple H during the corporation days with Seth Rollins turning on the Shield. So maybe those guys get involved, kind of, as long as you brought up the Wolfpack, as long as it doesn't culminate with the finger poke of doom part 2, I think we'll be in good shape.
Again, but even then you go back and you're like, what's best for business? So I don't know, keeping the belt on the guy that's shepherded the WWE into an era of unprecedented prosperity. I don't know. Maybe that's the thing you should do. Who knows? But you know what I do know is that we're both going to tune in. They got us hook, line, and sinker for the rest of our freaking lives. Follow them on all social media
platforms at Wyshynski. Greg, you always make our show a whole hell of a lot better. Great job on the predicted trade for the Tampa Bay Lightning. It was the best one, and now we're shouting it to the high heavens. That Jay Tampa Turkey, before you know it, will be lined up with John Cooper.
We will talk about it until it happens, or doesn't.
Got that. Speak it into fruition. The Pelican Brief himself, Greg Wyshynski. Thanks, partner. Appreciate you, buddy.
Anytime. Thanks,
man.